John chapter 14 and verse 1. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And where I go, you know, and the way you know. Thomas said unto him, Lord, we know not where you are going, and how can we know the way? Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes into the Father but by me. If you had known me, you should have known my Father also. And from henceforth you know him, and have seen him. Philip said unto him, Lord, show us the Father, and that will be all sufficient. Jesus said unto him, Have I been so long a time with you, and yet have you not known me, Philip? He that hath seen me has seen the Father. And how do you say then, Show us the Father? Believe you not that I am in the Father, and the Father in me? The words that I speak unto you, I speak not of myself, but the Father that dwells in me, he does the works. Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father in me, or else believe me for the very works' sake. Amen.
I know we looked at this portion this morning, and this morning we looked at the first half really, and I explained there about the fact that Jesus exhorted his disciples that when trouble came, that there was no need to stay in the trouble. Because although we can't dictate what troubles come our way, he said, let not your heart be troubled, believe in God, believe also in me, look up. And that's always the answer, isn't it? For whatever difficulties and situations we find in life, the answer is always to look up and to see him. And then we mentioned about the fact that they use this word mansions, although in the original, in the Greek, it's really translated dwellings or abode. But as I mentioned this morning, the translators of the AV wanted to get across to people that they weren't tenants, they weren't rented, they belonged, and we belong in heaven. You see, nobody could move the Lord out of the mansion. He owned the land, he owned the house, he belonged there. And it's very much that message that Jesus is giving to his disciples. You'll be with me in heaven, and nobody will be able to move you on. You're not a tenant, you're not renting, it's yours. You have your own place that I have prepared for you, and we will be together forever. Last week we saw that Simon Peter piped up and asked a question. And I mentioned last week that very often in the room various people are thinking the same thing, but it takes somebody to actually put it into words. And Peter had asked Jesus, where are you going? And why can't I come with you? And Jesus talks again here about going away. And we find that Thomas is the one who speaks up now. Jesus says in verse 4, where I go you know, and the way you know. Two things. You know where I'm going, you know the destination, and you know how to get there. You know the way. And Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you're going. And how can we know the way? When you stop and think about it, in one sense, that could be a bit demoralizing for Jesus, isn't it? He's there speaking in a very private, intimate way to his own disciples, the people who have been following him, the people he has been teaching for the last 2 to 3 years. And here he is talking to them about returning to the Father, and they admit they don't know what he's talking about. But Jesus is so patient, isn't he? And I take great comfort from this. The way you think this is at the very end of Jesus' ministry, and some of the basic truths are still struggling to be accepted by his disciples. But they are the ones that he chose. Knowing the struggles that they would have, knowing how difficult things would be for them, they were still the ones that he chose. And very often we can be hard on ourselves. I should know better. But he knows what we're like. And he loves us anyway. When we were at the funeral of Graham Monkley's wife Anne, the speaker there talked about this particular passage. And he gave an illustration there that I thought was really succinct and a lovely way of putting things across. And I'll just share it with you. What he said was the street where they live in is a little bit out of the way. So they give people the postcode. But he says if they've never been there before, even with the postcode, you could miss it. It's still difficult to find. So he says what we do is we send our son to go and wait on the corner. And he waits on the corner of the main road, and then he jumps in with them. Because he's been the way before. And he's from there. It's home. He knows where to take them. What a lovely way of thinking about this portion, isn't it? God has sent his son because he knows the way. He knows how to get there. And he's with us on the journey. And we see this lovely, yes, a little bit of frustration maybe, but also patience amidst the frustration that Jesus has. And his willingness to repeat over and over again. His willingness to underline key messages. Not to get annoyed and cross that they didn't get it first time, but to say it to them again. Where I go, you know, and the way you know. That's the only two things he's talking about. His destination and how to get there. And Thomas pipes up, I don't know what you're talking about. And Thomas says, we don't know. So when he looked around the room and he's seen on their faces, others were looking as confused as him. But it's not a personal thing. He's not saying, I don't know. He's saying, we don't know. Look at the way that Jesus answers that with a verse that is very often quoted, isn't it? Well known to many of us. Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Isn't it interesting that Jesus flipped it around? Thomas said, Lord, we don't know where you're going, and how can we know the way? And Jesus talked about the journey and how to get there first. And then he talks about the destination. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So the last part of the verse tells us the destination, doesn't it? Back to the Father, home, heaven, his rightful abode. He is returning home to his Father. And that is the promise for us. That is what is being offered to us. That we too can have the same destination. What makes heaven heaven? We talked about that this morning, isn't it? It's not what heaven is, it's who is there. It's the fact that it is God's abode. It's the fact that it is where God is. That's what makes it heaven. But how do we get there? How can we find our way to this wonderful destination? And Jesus says, well, I am the way. And it's lovely, isn't it, the way that he expresses that. It's not simply, I know the way. It's not simply, I can tell you the way. No, I am the way. It's through me that we come to the Father. It is through Christ that we find our eternal salvation. It is through Christ that we find our secure destiny for all of eternity. It is through him. You see, it's not following his example. It's not doing what he's done. We can never do that. We can't follow that example. Christ died once for the sin of the world. We all need to come to the cross, don't we? And it is what Christ has done on the cross that has secured the passage. It is what allows us to step into the presence of a holy God. Because Christ has died on the cross, died our death, taken the punishment of our sin. I am the way. It is through me. But he says more than that, doesn't he? It's a threefold answer, isn't it? I am the way, I am the truth. And you mentioned, didn't you, as he was sharing there about this man Jason that's upon his heart, that there's a seeking, there's a searching. And very often you find people talking about the fact that they're searching for the truth. What is truth? And it's incredible when you think truth is a person, isn't it? Truth. God is truth. Christ is truth. Truth isn't some ambiguous thing that we're seeking for. We find truth when we find Christ. He is the truth. It is in him that everything makes sense. It is in him that everything adds up. Everything comes together. He is the way to God. He is the truth of God. He is the very life of God. The life that he has is the life that has been imparted to us. We have that wonderful expression, don't we? We've been born again. We have come into life. Yes, as the Bible reminds us, we were once dead. Physically dead in God's eyes. Not literally dead, we were walking dead. We seemed to be alive, but we were dead to him. Our spirit was dead. No life. And at the end of our time on earth, there is no life in us. Death awaits. But in Christ, we have life. And at the end of our journey, life awaits us. Life continues in us. But it's not our life, it's his life. His life has been imparted to us. I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. And he offers it all for us. What a lovely way to express to his disciples the path to heaven. What a lovely way to talk about the fact that home awaits all of us. It's not just a journey for me, it's a journey for all of us. Yes, I'm going ahead, I'm going to prepare the place for you, but you will follow. In my time, according to my will, you will follow. And the way is always the same. It is through Christ, through his righteousness, through his sacrifice, through his death. And we will share that life with him forever. Jesus goes on to say in verse 7, if you had known me, notice that expression. Again, remind yourselves of who he's talking to. It's not a public message to the masses. It is a personal message to his 11 dearest friends, because Judas has already left now. If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. You see, there's no separation between the two. If you knew me, you would know the Father. I and the Father are one. If you had known me, then you would have known my Father also. And from now on, you know him and have seen him. Quite interesting, that phrase, isn't it? From now on, you know him and have seen him. Christ didn't only become the Son of God there and then. So why is he saying, from now on? It's the revelation. It's the evidence of his sonship, of his deity, that is going to be presented to them. The fact that he will demonstrate to them that he is the very Son of God. It is something that will click. It is something that they will understand. And incredible to think that they didn't understand it till then. Not in its fullness. Yes, they had little glimpses now and then of the fact that he was the Messiah. He is the promised one of God. But Jesus is there saying, you don't yet understand the fullness of all that I am and all that I will do. But from this day on, it will be evident to all of you. And you will know exactly who I am. And in knowing who I am, you will know exactly who my Father is too. Peter has spoken up. Thomas has spoken up. Now Philip speaks up. And in verse 8, Philip says, Lord, show us the Father, and it is sufficient for us. And it sounds a nice prayer, doesn't it? It sounds a nice request. Show us the Father. To want to see the Father. And no doubt he thought it was a good thing to say. It sounded good, definitely. But the response that he got from Jesus wasn't quite what he was expecting. Jesus turns to him in verse 9 and says, have I been with you so long, And yet you have not known me, Philip. Do you see that it's the same thought that Jesus is bringing out? Just as when he was speaking to Thomas, he said, look, your words, they show that you don't really know who I am yet. It hasn't really sunk in yet. You haven't got a full understanding of who I am. And he says the same to Philip. The words that you have just said, they show that even though I have been with you for so long, you don't know me. You don't really, really know me. Who I am, what I am about. He who has seen me has seen the Father. So how can you say, show us the Father? How can you even ask the question? You're asking to see the Father. Why? Do you think it's going to be different to me then? Philip, do you really think the heart of God is any different to my heart? Do you really think that there's more revelation to come from seeing the Father? The fullness of the Godhead bodily dwelleth in our Lord. They've seen him already. They were already looking at him. God in flesh. God taken upon himself the form of a man. He who has seen me, and he's already seen the Father. Why are you asking for me to show you the Father? And then it comes down to that crucial question, doesn't it? Verse 10, do you not believe? It always comes back to faith, doesn't it? Do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father in me? And he repeats it again in verse 11, believe me that I am in the Father and the Father in me. It's no coincidence that Jesus put the expression both ways round. He wants to clear up any misunderstanding at all. They are coexistent. They share complete authority. You cannot separate the two of them at all. Very often, isn't it, when we think of fathers and children, we very often look to the Son and say, oh, we can see the Father in the Son. But it works the other way around as well here. You can see the Father in the Son, and you can see the Son in the Father. Jesus shows the Father. When you look at Jesus, you know the Father too. You want to know what the Father is like? Well, the Son shows you. So often we think in natural terms that the Son has the traits of the Father, but the Father has the traits of the Son. When we're talking about God, they have equal influence. It's not a case of one coming after the other. No, they are on the level. You see the Father in the Son, you see the Son in the Father. You want to see the Father, Philip? Well, look at me. If you see me, you've already seen him. I am in the Father, and the Father's in me. We're not separate. We're not working independently. Do you really think that the words that I've spoken are my words? Do you really think that the authority of the works that I have done is my own authority? No, I have come in the full authority of the Father. Everything that I have said is exactly what the Father wanted to be said. Yes, it's amazed you. Yes, it's shocked you. Yes, it's completely different to the God that you thought you knew. But that is the real God. God had never changed. Their understanding and perception as to who he was wrong. But he had never changed. God is the unchangeable one. Jesus just came to reveal to us what God was always like anyway. It's just that people had lost sight of him. People didn't understand the heart of God. Believe me, I am in the Father, and the Father in me. Or else, believe me for the sake of the words themselves. Quite challenging this, really, when you think. That Jesus is saying to Philip, if your faith was strong enough, my word is sufficient. If your faith is strong enough, my word is sufficient. But if your faith is struggling, then look at the evidence that has been produced over these 2 to 3 years. Look at all that I have done. Does this not prove that I am working with the very authority of God? But you see, the word always takes priority. Always takes priority. Do we know him? Do we really know him? His closest friends had spent years with him, and they thought they knew him, but when he started talking to them, they quickly realized how much they didn't know. But it didn't mean that they failed. It didn't mean that they were shown the door. It just meant we had to be a bit more patient with them. Aren't you grateful that God is patient with us? That he is always seeking to draw us closer to him. He is always seeking to reveal more of who he is to us. And even when we're struggling, and we don't really see it, he is so patient with us. I thank God that we know the way, we know the truth, and we know the life. And through him, we know that one day we too can see the Father. We too will share heaven with him because he loves us, he cares for us, he's died for us, he has saved us. Amen.